Hey, we should be live. Recording.
All right. Welcome, Football Life members. My name is Randy Hammond. I am one-third of your hosts here on the Deep Thirds Football Podcast. I'm joined by my two football-loving compadres, Matthew Bushnell. How you doing today, man?
Fantastic, sir. It's a little chilly here in Arizona, so not used to this kind of weather.
Oh, please. Enough. Karl, you are a fellow not upstate New Yorker, but living in the Northeast. Karl, Arnoth, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. My first day off in January, so I'm trying to enjoy that. It is freezing here, so yeah. But I'm doing well.
Yes. I don't want to hear about 50s being cold over there in Arizona. I live in upstate New York. It is cold every day of my life. Speaking of cold, if my voice annoys you today, I apologize. A little congested. That's okay. We're going to keep the show rolling. This is a football podcast. We are about toughness. So I'm going to tough it out for you guys here today. So, don't give me too much credit. Coming up on the show, we're going to recap Wild Card Weekend, which was an incredible weekend of football games. If I do say so myself, I certainly enjoyed everything. And we're going to preview the divisional round. We have an exciting slate of games there, too. We are also going to preview a national championship game, which is happening Monday night. But first, we have a lot of good teams playing in the playoffs, teams that deserve to be here, teams that are well run. But there are also teams looking for coaches because those coaches did not do a good job. There are, I'm not good at math, 24 teams not playing football anymore. So they are currently in the off season. So we want to get to a few off season decisions that have been made, a couple transactions that have been made. We're going to do a little coaching carousel here, quick hitters. The Cowboys moving on from Jason Garrett. Karl, I know that is music to your ears, hiring Mike McCarthy as their head coach. Tell me how you feel about that.
To be honest, I don't have much to say about McCarthy at the moment. I don't think he was the right hire for the job. That's all I got to say about that. I mean, he's not much better than Garrett, to be honest. I mean, he led the Packers for who knows how long with Favre and Rodgers, and only won one Super Bowl, and I think that was despite McCarthy.
I tend to agree for much of that. I think it's a safe hire. I don't think it's anything snazzy. I think you guys could have done much better. Matt, how do you feel about it?
I think for a franchise that has a quarterback that they're not sure if they want to keep or move on from, basically they're starting to enter that salary cap hell phase that we always talk about. The majority of their cap is tied up into offensive linemen and linebackers and defensive linemen. DeMarcus Lawrence, that's another topic to get into. But what's Mike McCarthy going to bring to this team that's going to make it more dynamic? I heard that he brought in Mike Nolan as a defensive coordinator, who typically runs a three-man front with four linebackers, even though we only see, and that's considered a base defense. We only see that typically on first downs, and most teams move to nickel after that. I don't see what he's going to bring to the Cowboys that Jason Garrett didn't bring. Much to Karl's point, it was a safe hire, prototypical Jerry. Jerry brought him in a room. Oh, you like this? I like this. Okay, you got the job. I even heard he spent the night at Jerry's house. Imagine how weird that must have been.
That's the funniest thing.
Weird.
Yeah, that is the most Cowboys thing ever. Of course, Jerry had the guy stay over at his house and fell in love with him, right? But that is so Cowboys, the most Cowboy story. And apparently the guy's changed. He's embracing analytics now. So, whatever. Well, I guess we'll see about that. To me, he wasn't that impressive in Green Bay, given the fact that he had such a great quarterback. What were you going to say? I apologize.
Yeah, no problem, Randy. It goes back to me looking at it like this. He had a much better quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. He had much better skill position players than what Dallas has right now. And I know we can cite Zeke and Amari Cooper, but I'm not enthralled with the tight end position or the other wide receiver position in Dallas. And it just felt like there's a lot to be desired. And Cooper is going to get paid. I mean, you're talking about the Giants with a lot of cap space. You're talking about teams that need wide receiver help. The 49ers, who are playing this weekend, need wide receiver help. Dallas is going to have to pay Dak close to probably $33 to $37 million a year. That's probably what you're looking at for a franchise quarterback if they're going to extend him. I think Cooper's gone. So where does this team go? An 8-8 football team with a mid-level draft pick. I'm sorry, Karl. Welcome to football hell.
It's definitely going to be a rough few years. We're definitely have the room to sign anybody. I have a feeling that they're going to probably franchise Cooper. I mean, there's no way they can sign both Dak and Cooper, and they have to, but there's no way they can do it. So I really don't know what to expect.
I guess we will see the situation in Dallas and what happens down there with Mike McCarthy. See if he actually changes. And we'll have to see what happens there in a couple of months and what happens with Amari Cooper's contract and with Dak Prescott's contract. We're going to move on to the next coach, who I'm surprised I'm not saying is the next Giants head coach, but now the Carolina Panthers head coach from Baylor, Matt Rule. You share a name with this man, Matt. How do you feel about this guy?
I'm really indifferent. I like the boldness of the hire. I think it does a lot of different things and makes the draft very intriguing coming up. You're talking about a team that wants to move on from Cam Newton. They don't have the quarterback of the future on this roster right now. I know some people say Will Grier. I don't know. I think this is a prime team that's going to trade up in the draft. You're looking at Tua from Alabama as probably the primary target. It's innovative. It's different. It's a lot like Arizona getting their guy in Kingsbury, bringing that offensive spread system to the NFL. It can work. So I'm indifferent to it. It can really work, but he needs a really strong defensive coordinator, who I just heard he brought his defensive coordinator from Baylor, who, I mean, Big 12 defense. It doesn't happen.
Right. I really like appreciate what he did for the Baylor program, because they were facing sanctions. They were as low in the Big 12 as possible as you could get. He picked them and he built them back up, and they didn't even win the Big 12 as far as I'm concerned. But to go 11-2, make a couple bowl games, that says a lot about his pedigree and his ability to turn around a program, and as quickly as he did is nothing to sneeze at either. So Karl, do you want to comment on Matt Rule?
Yeah, like I said before, like I was telling you guys, I don't really follow college football too much, but it's interesting that they gave him such a long contract for so much money. Without
Good point.
I mean, he had 1 year of NFL experience, I think, as an assistant coach or something. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how that works out. But yeah, I definitely agree with Matt with the quarterback issue. I feel like they're gonna move up in the draft and try to grab one of the top guys there. But yeah, I don't know much about Rule himself.
It's a good point about the money. He signed for 7 years and $60 million with incentives, which is a lot of money to pay a coach. But a coach doesn't count against their salary cap. So if it works out, then it's a great move. So I'm excited to see how that goes. I really like what he said in his press conference. He seems like a really well put together guy, which brings me to the last guy we're going to talk in depth about, which is the new head coach of the New York Giants, which I'd be shocked if anyone saw this one coming. Joe Judge. Joe Judge is now the head coach of the New York Giants. I don't know how this happened until I watched the press conference last night, and I can tell how he can kind of control a room. His personality is very infectious. He says a lot of things that especially Giants fans, I think, liked, with the traditional hard-nosed old school football talk, and I'm pretty sure that's how he won over Dave Gettleman, which is how I imagine that once they were out on Rule, which they were ruled out, I should say, that's how they ended up with him. I could tell that they must have fell in love with him within 20 minutes with the way he speaks about his football philosophies and things like that. I have concerns about other things, but I don't know how anyone could say this is a good or bad move, considering he's never been a head coach in the NFL. No one could truly say, oh, this is a terrible move, like he doesn't have any experience, or they can say this is a great move because they've never seen him do anything. Because at the end of the day, we don't know how players are going to respond to him. We don't know how he's going to strategize. We know how he wants to do things. He's truly a teacher of men. He's an inspiring kind of guy. I worry about his experience and how believable that he is. But to me, the coach was never the problem with the Giants. Well, Shermer wasn't good at all, don't get me wrong. But with getting rid of one and not getting rid of the other person, I find is the bigger issue here. Until they got rid of the general manager, it didn't matter who the head coach was. So, Matt, tell me why the Giants aren't going to be doing this again in 2 years.
I can't. This was absolutely one of the worst head coaching hires, in my opinion. You have visible evidence. Matt Patricia in Detroit. He's going on his third year, hasn't won more than 5 games. Charlie Weiss at Notre Dame, failed at Notre Dame outside the players that he received from Ty Willingham. Romeo Crennel, failed in Cleveland. People want to cite Eric Mangini, 1 or 2 good years. The Jets, not overly impressed with his whole body of work. Josh McDaniels over in Denver, flamed out. I mean, at some point things stop becoming coincidences and start becoming trends. And you start thinking like, I'm going to hire this Bill Belichick disciple. I'm not touching those guys because they're proving that they're going to fail. And Joe Judge, Dredd, may be, some sort of fantastic head coach in the future. And I could be totally wrong about this, but history says I'm going to be right. I don't see, like, you want to bring an old school mentality. I want to play defense and play physical. Well, guess what? The NFL's going away from that. We're not playing physical. We're going to spread you out. We're going to make quick reads, a lot of read options, and we're going to attack you out. And it's great that you want to try to implement this strategy, but I mean, it's 2020 now. It's not 2000. And I think he may miss that point. And if you don't have an offensive coordinator that can really implement these concepts with a roster that needs some tweaking on offense to do this, I don't see it. 2 years. Yeah.
It makes me sad because, I think that the way Daniel Jones showed some development, it made me kind of optimistic about the future. But like I said, until Dave Gettleman and the new regime is in there to truly advance some things, I have my doubts. And I think I'm fair. It's acceptable for me to have my doubts. This team is on the worst 3-game stretch in franchise history since they have expanded to the 16-game season. They have lost more games than any team in the NFL in the last 3 years, and the Browns went 0-16 in that time, I might add. I don't want to say they're toxic or anything like that, but they clearly have a problem, and they are clearly stuck in the past with how they do things. I think Joe Judge is a good leader of men, and I think if they hire an offensive coordinator who could develop a quarterback like Daniel Jones, then I think that there's optimism here. But if he hires a guy like Jason Garrett or Freddie Kitchens, I am much less optimistic about the future of this team and this franchise. Karl, you are familiar with Jason Garrett. Are you any familiar with Joe Judge? You have anything to say about the Giants hire here?
I actually kind of like the Judge hiring. Not just because I'm a Cowboys fan and being optimistic about that, but I mean, for the Giants, I think it's a good hire. It really depends on who the offensive coordinator is going to be, though.
I agree.
Everything that he said and everything I've heard about him seems to be, it seems to be pretty well. I mean, he was a special teams coordinator. Like, I learned a lot about special teams coordinator this week, just reading up on him. Like, apparently they know the whole roster better, like more than the other coaches do. So he should do pretty well. But they're definitely going to need the right offensive coordinator to make that work.
Yeah, I have my worries. Go ahead.
The thing, special teams coordinators should definitely get more looks. First of all, they hired the wrong special teams coordinator. Dave Toub should have had this job if you're going to hire a special teams coordinator. Randy, we were talking about it this week. The units routinely ranked last in the NFL in special team production. Dave Toub's always in the top 10. Innovative, different. He knows the NFL. He knows what his players can do. He's an excellent talent evaluator. And you can be a leader of men and you can say all the right things at the press conferences. I've seen it as a Bears fan. Phil Emery and the Mark Trestman era, that was one of the most depressing Bears eras in the history of my fandom. And he went up there as like, I'm a leader of men. I'm going to grow the man. We see how well he grew Jay Cutler. So I'm not buying the press conference stuff. I'm not buying people going into, speaking, oh, he's a great leader of men. He's going to do this. At some point, you have to have expertise and you have to know what you're talking about. It's great to talk, but you have to know what you're talking about or else it carries no weight. So I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, and I think that it's good that he is under the Saban and Belichick tree, but at the same time, he's not those guys. And I don't think it's fair for us to expect him to be those guys. I'm glad he learned from those guys, and that's great, but you have to have your own experiences to truly relate to certain situations, and I worry about that. And I think part of it is I think those guys make your life a little easier when it comes to being a coach on their staff. They probably oversee a lot of the special team stuff because they are super involved coaches and they worry about every little thing that I think they do make your life a little easier. And I worry that he's going to come into this situation and it's kind of a dumpster fire and he's not going to have that coach to lean on to show him the ropes. So I think we've spent a little bit too much time talking about the Giants and Joe Judge. A quick note that the Redskins hired Ron Rivera, which is a good coaching hire, I would say. I think that I really like what the Redskins did, pairing him with Jack Del Rio as defensive coordinator. Any quick thoughts on those? How about you, Karl?
I think those are probably the two best hires we've seen so far. The Redskins are I think they're heading in the right direction, which is from going from this year to next year. I think is going to be a big turnaround for them.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, what about you?
A team that needed discipline hires a coach that instills discipline. Amazing.
And I mean, you would think it would be that logical, but some teams just don't have the right logic.
Faith. There's faith in the football humanity. There are some teams. The Redskins of all teams. I'm shocked. I really am.
No, I was completely shocked.
All right. So enough of the bad teams trying to find their ways. Let's talk about teams that earned a spot in the greatest playoff in the world. The NFL playoffs have commenced. The wild card weekend was everything we could have imagined, probably better than we could have imagined. We expected at least one game to be a blowout. Every game was competitive. So let's go in order here, guys. The Bills going into Houston. They had a 16-0 lead going into halftime, which I didn't think anyone saw coming. But as you called him, Matt, big game Deshaun showed up in the second half. He finished 20 of 25 and right in for a touchdown, threw for another, and had one of the greatest sack escapes that you will ever see, and put the team on his back, leading to an overtime victory over the Bills. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that encompasses it right there. I broke down a lot of plays from this weekend's slates, and that's the sack was the one that stood out to me in this game more so than anything. The Bills brought their pressure, and Deshaun is so slippery, and how he's able to move and the route combinations that they utilize was fantastic. And I mean, I think we all kind of knew that this is Deshaun Watson, that he was going to show up. I'm still fearful that, he's going to get hurt one of these days because he does take so many hits and he waits for these plays to develop, but it worked against the Bills, and it was a good game by Deshaun Watson. And I criticized J.J. Watt. We weren't sure how much of a difference J.J. Watt was going to make, but the pressure he put on the offensive line, and then they had to start double teaming him, and they brought guys over to chip him. It made a huge difference for that defense when he got more time in the second half.
Yeah, no question.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, I think I mentioned that last week. If Watt was able to play, I feel like he would have made a big difference, and he did make a huge difference in that game.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought J.J. Watt was playing quarterback for the Texans by how much the broadcast was talking about him. They loved themselves some J.J. Watt, and as a recent poll on Football Life would show you, and he was voted the best defensive player of the decade. So as he's well-deserved that. I mean, he's one of the two players ever to have 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. So obviously he's a great player, maybe a little past his prime, but obviously still a difference maker. But to me, Deshaun Watson, biggest difference in this game, goes to show that quarterback is truly the most important position in sports. He carried this Texans team that did not deserve to win this game to a victory. He willed them with his legs. He avoided pressure. I mean, he got sacked 3 times still, but he made plays with his feet. That guy, I mean, I'm sorry, Matt, but he should be the Bears quarterback right now.
Oh boy, that's a wound I don't want to open right now.
He is incredible, and I'm excited to see what the Texans do this weekend. All right, so let's transition to the game that I'm just going to brag about just a tiny bit. The other game on Saturday, went out on a limb here. I said that one team was better than another. No big deal. Only the greatest dynasty in history of football. Going down. It's over to the Tennessee Titans. Let's go. Ryan Tannehill only completed 8 passes, but Derrick Henry is a beast and carried the Tennessee Titans to a victory in Foxborough. What did I watch? It was one of the most entertaining games I watched all year, Karl. What did you see?
I mean, this is probably the game I got to see the most of out of all the games. I really didn't get to see much because of, shitty work schedule at this period of the year. But I was pretty surprised at the outcome. I mean, we expected this to happen sooner or later. Brady would eventually turn into, a 42-year-old, which he is. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that he's still playing at as high of a level at this age, but we kind of knew this would come eventually, and it looks like that the time has come for that. But yeah, this game can be summed up into 2 words, and that's Derrick Henry. He completely ran all over the Pats, and they could not do a damn thing about it.
Was he the second overall pick in the draft, or was he no? Oh, okay, just checking. Yeah. I believe he was 45th in the second round, but I digress. Matt, what were your takeaways?
Oh boy, you guys say Derrick Henry, but I'm going to say Mike Vrabel. probably one of the most underrated coaches in the NFL right now. His defensive game plan to really limit Brady, like they took away everything on the inside, the short, quick passes that Brady lives off of. They took that away. Like, all right, your wide receivers are going to have to beat us down the field. And, Father Time is unbeatable, undefeated, as we say. And you see it in Brady's arm strength. I don't think we're at the Manning Bronco level yet,
Not
but
yet.
it looks, yeah, but man, it's coming. It's coming. And I know he said he wants to play again, but I don't want to say that Brady's the reason they lost this game, but he definitely didn't help them win this game either.
No, and
I agree.
Brady, he didn't play terrible in the game. I mean, but he doesn't have the people around him that Peyton happened to have at this stage of his career. Plus, the Broncos defense was ridiculous. And that's what Brady's going to need. He's going to need a better defense, and he's going to need more weapons because he can't carry a team anymore. He just can't do it.
Matt, I understand your point. I was just gonna say I understand your point about Mike Vrabel and his defensive game plan. I just think that, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's easy to game plan for the Patriots in 2019. I don't think they have a playmaker that scares you. I think that their offensive line is kind of shot now, and I think that their best playmaker is Julian Edelman, who played a terrible game. He had 2 brutal drops. And I don't know if he's battling an injury or whatnot, but look, what made the Patriots tick in the playoffs is that you had to double Gronkowski over the middle every single play, and he was a force when it came to blocking, especially run blocking. And that void has obviously been felt all year. I mean, it's a good game plan by Vrabel, but I honestly think it's easy to game plan for the Patriots now.
Well, I think what you saw, though, was Vrabel let the Patriots run the football. I mean, he essentially said, we'll give you the edges. A lot of the yards the Patriots got were on off-tackle plays, sweeps to the sidelines, and Vrabel was really okay with that. And I go back to Vrabel knew that Brady's not going to be able to chuck the ball down the field. It's not really going to help him be able to keep on getting those middle yards. And he was like, go deep down the sidelines. That's where we want Brady to throw the football. And that's why I kind of lean towards Vrabel on this a little bit, because they stacked the middle of the field. We saw the Patriots get a bunch of chunk yards, but with Brady and with these young offensive coaches, it's pass, 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 pass. Kind of what I talk about with Joe Judge being the coach of the Giants, wanted to go to this physical style of football. I mean, things only work if you have the players to make it work. I mean, let's get that out of the way right now. And obviously, Vrabel's got talent on defense, and obviously they have an all-world running back in the backfield with Derrick Henry on offense. It works for the Titans. They play really good defense. They run the football. They limit their quarterback, which is almost what you have to do nowadays if you have a bad quarterback, Mitch Trubisky. So, I'm impressed by the Titans. I was impressed with Vrabel, and yes, I was impressed with Henry.
I think that the Titans are what Dave Gettleman wishes the Giants were. Good offensive line, good defense, pound the ball. Yep. But Derrick Henry is not that good unless you have an offensive line and a offensive philosophy to truly commit to the run like that. I think the Titans are a unique team, the only team like that in the NFL, and credit to them for sticking it to the Patriots. I don't know about you guys. It kind of feels like the end of an era. And if it does. If it is, good riddance. I think we're all kind of over it.
Yeah, I think I pretty much said that when during the game, like at the very end, like I think we just witnessed the end of an era.
Yeah, I got nothing but respect for Bill and Brady, but God, let's move on from this already. Jeez, he's been around for too long. I think we've talked about that game for just a little bit too long. Let's move on to Sunday, which had no shortage of drama either, and a game that we all got wrong. The Minnesota Vikings, with Kirk Cousins, going into New Orleans and defeating the Saints, who many of us thought had a chance to make the Super Bowl, and many of us thought they were outmatched. And, Matt, you have significant takeaways from this game. Tell me what you saw.
So, on this game, I want to focus on Cousins for a second. So, a couple of key plays that we have here. On the second quarter, with about 1:58 left in the second quarter, Saints were, it was 10-6, I believe, the Saints. Cousins targeted Thielen in the middle of the field. New Orleans brought pressure. Cousins was able to look off the safety to give Thielen that extra second to get open. Huge 19-yard gain that set them up for the touchdown to go up eventually 13-10 going into halftime. Drew Brees, what I really saw is when they were inside the Minnesota 5-yard line, basically it was 3rd and 4 on the Minnesota 4. This was in the first quarter, beginning of the game pretty much. And this is when I knew something was off with Brees. He didn't lead Ginn to the corner of the end zone. He just kind of chucked it. It looked bad. You know, the right tackle got beat immediately. Brees ended up holding on to the ball, took a sack. It was just mismanagement on Brees. He just needed to get the ball out of there quickly. He didn't recognize the blitz and the pressure on that play. And then we take a look at the play towards the end of the game where he threw to Michael Thomas, and I think it's one of the plays we remember to set up that field goal. He underthrew Michael Thomas pretty badly. He threw it to his outside, and Thomas had to get down. The one thing I noticed about Brees throughout all these plays, I'm going through watching this tape, is like he's putting his entire body into all of these throws. And I know he may not be healthy, but I mean, everything. Minnesota dropped 2. They played cover 2 most of the game, cover 2 man. And they just dared Brees to take the underneath because they basically had no respect for his deep ball. They're like, well, you know, we'll give you the underneath stuff. You throw it deep. And when he did throw it deep, he got picked off. I mean, it just looked like an end of an era for Brees as well. And this Saints team is not good defensively. Delvin Cook had whatever he wanted. I know, Karl, you cited earlier that it was a top 5 rush defense in the NFL this year. But I take a look at their division, Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Those 2 teams basically don't run the ball very much at all if they don't have to. So, I mean, to what we talked about, it really does seem like a fraudulent team, and I think Brees is the reason they lost this game.
To me, it feels like Brees was almost a game manager with a big name at this point. But to defend Brees a little bit, he has a thumb problem. You can see the brace on his hand, and maybe age is playing a little bit of a factor. But I guess it's a good thing that he doesn't play in the Northeast or outdoors in the cold anywhere, right? Karl, what did you see from this game?
I really didn't see much of this game at all. I did see some of the end, and I was kind of shocked at towards the end of the game, there was a play towards the end of the game where the Saints elected to, instead of using their last timeout, they accepted, they took a 10-second runoff. And I did, without even watching the game, I knew right there that Brees was not playing well, because if he was playing well, there's no reason why you don't take a timeout there and at least take one shot to the end zone there.
It's a coaching gaffe too, right? I mean, why? What's the point of keeping a timeout in that situation? Why not try?
They held a timeout, but to go into overtime, it didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, and throughout the game, they really didn't utilize Alvin Kamara as much as I thought they should have. I know we cite Michael Thomas as a human vacuum cleaner, but in order to give Thomas those favorable matchups one-on-one on DBs, you got to suck up those safeties. And there was no – I'm not sure how you guys felt in the game, but I really felt at no point that Kamara was a real threat in this game. It just kind of felt like he was there, decoy maybe. But, man, I felt like Sean Payton got pantsed in this game by Mike Zimmer, defense versus offense, and Zimmer put a clinic on.
I mean, as a Kamara fantasy owner in one league, I can tell you that they really haven't used him too much at all this season, which is super frustrating. I think he's most effective in the passing game too. He runs a really good slant route coming out of the backfield over the middle, and no linebacker can stay in front of him either. So to me, it's frustrating how little usage he gets in the offense. But there's two things that I noticed in this game that really stuck out to me. One is that we didn't even talk about in our preview, and that's a shame on us, but the Vikings defensive line is so talented. And the 2 guys that I always watch, and I'm just like, these guys are legit 2 of the best defensive players in the league, are Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin. And we didn't even bring them up. And I think that we owe them an apology for that, because they dominated this game. And Danielle Hunter is the youngest player ever to 100 sacks. And he made his presence known in this game. And Everson Griffin is so good. And he obviously was a factor in that Kamara rushing attack, and the help stuff Latavius Murray as well. And to me, I love Drew Brees as an athlete. I love him. I think he's a great role model. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in my lifetime. He was the 3rd best quarterback in this game And if Teddy Bridgewater found his way in, he would have been the fourth. I really think he crippled the Saints in a lot of ways. And I don't know what the problem is. Maybe he's old. Maybe his thumb is bothering him more than we realize. Maybe the line played worse than he expected. But this game at home against Kirk Cousins, who's never won a big game in his life, I am just legitimately shocked that they lost this game.
Yeah, I think two things to really hit on with that point is the fact that Mike Zimmer can do what he does because of that defensive front, Randy. And that was a great call with Danielle Hunter and Everest Griffin. Fantastic pressure. They only had to bring 4, and they got to Breeze quite a bit, even to make him feel uncomfortable and get off the spot. And the other thing I saw from Breeze, like he wasn't stepping up into the pocket. Like he would get in his spot on his drop, and that was it. He didn't feel too comfortable with the pressure on that pocket, that interior pressure. And then let's discuss the big rallying cry that everyone's talking about, the pass interference to end the game on the touchdown pass from Kyle Reed. I'm sorry. You let players fight for the ball in a certain aspect. It was hand fighting. We see it happen all the time. From my point of view, Rudolph basically had his arm extended. And the only time a ref is going to call offensive pass interference is if he sees that elbow extend into the DB to really push him off. And it looked like, for the most part, Rudolph had his arm extended already. They were both hand fighting. Rudolph ran the better route, got to a spot. He's 6'4" or 5". That DB had no shot. It was a touchdown, no flag. No flag was needed. It was the right call by the refs.
Yep, I got to agree with the pass interference call. People were crying. I kind of expected a review just because it was last play of the game, but we didn't get one, even though we all know they wouldn't overturn it anyway, even if it was pass interference. But I agree with Matt. I didn't see anything there that would make me throw a flag at all. I mean, there was hand fighting, but he pushed off a little bit, but it didn't hinder the defender whatsoever, I don't think.
Yeah, I honestly think if they threw a flag there, it would have been a makeup call for what happened last year, and I don't think that's right in that situation. You can't correct a wrong. You can't, two wrongs don't make a right in that situation. I think you just have to let those guys play. And obviously, credit to Kirk Cousins for identifying a mismatch, a 6'6" tight end on a 6-foot corner. Maybe put a taller person on the tight end there. I don't know what to tell you. It's 3 years in a row. There's devastating losses for the Saints. It must kind of hurt a little bit to be a Saints fan, but I think they'll be back. I think Breeze will be back, and we'll be having this conversation again.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off of that,
we lost Randy.
Yep, but he'll be back. Randy always has a way of coming back. So I think what we look for, going forward, is that the reason it wasn't called is because the elbow. They're going to watch that elbow, and they're going to make sure that if it's not if it's extended, they're not going to call it. If it is extended, if they do extend it, then they may call that on there. But as far as the Saints coming back, I don't see it. I mean, Tampa Bay has to get better under year 2 under Bruce Arians. I think the Panthers are going to be really interesting because I think if they get Tua, that's going to be a drastic improvement. I don't think the Saints are going to have that cakewalk, and the first place schedule is going to include San Francisco, Philadelphia, and then Green Bay. So those are going to, yeah. I mean, to me, it feels like a 10-6 team, 9-7, and if they have to play a road game, I don't see them winning that. I mean, this was their true last shot, in my opinion. You had a home game. Supposedly, you run that dome and you let Kirk Cousins come in there and beat you, and you expect me to think that you can come back next year better? How? You're already not utilizing Kamara. You throw way too many times with an aging quarterback who has thumb issues and starts racking up injuries. And guess what? You can't pay Teddy Bridgewater because you literally are in cap hell because you've paid so many guys. Breeze goes down. I like Taysom Hill, but he's not a number 2 quarterback in this league.
Yeah.
I don't see it, Randy.
I understand your points. Just point out, sorry for the technical difficulties, but another point I wanted to make before we move on to the last game of the year, or the weekend, is I wanted to make this point for the Bills-Texans, but did you know that these were the first 2 playoff overtime games since 2011 when Tim Tebow hit Demaryius Thomas to defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2011. I was shocked to hear that, but obviously they're not counting the Super Bowl 51 overtime game with the Patriots and Falcons. But we had 2 overtime games, and very rare for a playoff weekend. So Matt, good stuff there. Karl, good stuff. It's okay with you guys. Let's move on to the last game of the weekend, where the Seattle Seahawks went into Philadelphia and knocked knocked Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles out of the playoffs. Karl, I as a fellow Eagles hater, I mean, you have to feel kind of not bad for the Eagles fans, but a little bad for Carson Wentz, right?
I absolutely feel bad for Carson Wentz. This game, I think that was the whole story of this game. Once Wentz went down, they basically had no chance. I don't think. Nick Foles wasn't coming back through that door.
He was not.
And yeah, I definitely feel bad for Wentz. I mean, it was pretty bad play where he got hurt. It wasn't his fault. I mean, people say he's made of glass and all that, but anybody would have went down from that hit.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was a cheap shot like everyone else said, but I definitely think it was definitely not his fault. Obviously, I don't know how you could control that.
I'm not saying it was a cheap shot, but it was definitely a very, very hard
right.
hit.
Some people were calling it a cheap shot. I don't think he was just moving full speed. He dove head first. It's an accident. Josh McCown came in, actually played pretty decent, I thought. Matt, how about you?
No, I didn't see that, Randy. I saw a team that was severely overmatched offensively. At no point when Carson Wentz went down, I didn't feel threatened by Philly's offense. I mean, when I was breaking down the game tape, I was going through it, I'm like, okay, where are my key plays for the Eagles? The only key play I had for the Eagles, Carson Wentz gets sacked, injured on the play by Jadeveon Clowney. That's it for the Eagles. And then I look at Seattle. Wilson, pass to DK Metcalf. Pass DK Metcalf 24 yards. Philly's playing cover one, leads to a field goal. DK Metcalf, 3-3, 2-minute warning, second quarter, 3rd and 4 on their own 24. Wilson to Metcalf, 26-yard gain, push out of bounds at the 50. DB had no chance. And then we had the Lynch to touchdown run. And then obviously third quarter, it's 10-6 Seattle. 9:14 left in the third quarter. 2nd and 11. Wilson to DK Metcalf, 53 yards, touchdown. Cover one. And then obviously the last play of the game, DK Metcalf, 40-something yards on a cover 0 blitz. I mean, at no point, once Seattle got up 10-6, I felt that game was over. And watching the game tape just confirmed it. It didn't feel like anything changed in that game. When McCown started it to when he finished it, it just felt over.
Yeah, that's a good point. It really felt kind of like a boring game after Wentz went out. I'll just point out McCown at 40 has never played in a playoff game in his life. Went in and completed 18 to 24 passes for 174 yards. Didn't throw a touchdown or pick. Had a 94 quarterback rating. However much you feel about that. To me, Russell Wilson had a decent game, but thanks to, like you said, his wide receiver DK Metcalf playing his best game of his young career at the right time. David Boston reincarnated, I guess. He's a very giant man with pretty good hands.
Terrell Owens, Randy. Think
Terrell
of Terrell
Owens.
Owens.
Interesting. That's I don't know if he's as good of a route runner, but I guess he could still develop for sure. Karl, do you think Wentz is ever going to get over this, man? I don't know. I just feel like it's not his fault this time around. We said that, but to me, it's always just going to be the stigma around him.
Until he actually does play a full playoff game, this stigma will never go away. He will be Mr. Glass until he can stay healthy for an entire season.
All right. Yeah, you're probably right. One final note before we move on to the divisional round. The Seattle Seahawks kicker and I share a alma mater. He went to Marist College. He's a Red Fox. So root for the Seahawks going forward.
I'm sorry. I'm a little confused by that, Randy. Were you just throwing up the NWO sign from 1998 wrestling?
Yeah, this is the Red Fox and NWO are too sweet. It could be. It's a very versatile sign.
I see.
Yes. All right. So it's Friday. It is the 38th anniversary of the catch in San Francisco. So why don't we start there? Tomorrow, where the Minnesota Vikings go in to face the 1 seed in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers, led by Jimmy Garoppolo and head coach. I'm blanking on his name, but you know his story. Come on, let's go. Matt, start us off
Kyle
here.
Shanahan.
Kyle Shanahan, thank you. Yes, Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo and Raheem Mostert. What do you think?
So I am thinking, I've thought about this game, and I've looked back at past San Francisco tape. Henry, Roberto, I'm sorry to break this to you, but you're done. I think Minnesota goes in there. Yeah, I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo in these spots. He holds onto the ball too long. He's good for 1 or 2 picks a game under pressure. Minnesota's going to be able to bring their 4. I'm not sure if they're going to have to add pressure, but I think they can get home with their 4. They're going to drop back, and they're going to dare Jimmy Garoppolo to beat them. And I don't think Jimmy's he's going to put up decent stats. I got the score 24-23 Minnesota.
Big upset. Big upset. Karl, how do you feel?
I kind of feel the same way as Matt in regards to the game. I feel like this game, the spread on this game is way off. Like Vegas is way overrating the 49ers, or either that or way underrating the Vikings. Either way, Garoppolo is going to be under a lot of pressure, and he tends to hold onto the ball way too long. And that's going to be a big problem for them. And on the other side of the ball, Kirk Cousins might not be able to do too much. I mean, he won his first playoff game, but it hadn't really had nothing to do with him. But I believe Dalvin Cook has become one of those running backs where no matter who he's playing against, he's matchup proof. Like he is one of those types of players that no matter who they're playing, he's going to be in your starting lineup in fantasy. He's got to put up numbers regardless. So I feel like the 49ers, I really don't know who's going to win this game. I feel like the 49ers should win this game, but I would not be surprised at all if the Vikings do win this game.
What is the spread on this game, Karl, and what would you take on it?
It is 7.
7. Okay.
Yeah.
So you would probably take the Vikings then, getting 7.
I would absolutely take the Vikings 100%.
Okay. I find this game to be very interesting because I have such a different thought on it after the Vikings went into New Orleans and upset the Saints, because to me, they have a recipe for success that is similar to how the Giants won 2 Super Bowls in 4 years and beating the Patriots twice. They can only rush 4 and keep their secondary back and play zone coverage, play man coverage, and still get to the quarterback. That to me is so big that they do not have to bring extra pressure to get there. And I think Kirk Cousins might have this Rain Man quality that Eli did, where I think actually, Karl, he did play pretty well in the dome against New Orleans, against a solid defense and a really good secondary at that. I do think that San Francisco's defense is a lot better than New Orleans' defense, and I don't know if I trust the Vikings playing outside. I know it's California, but it's still a different atmosphere being inside in the dome. I think Kirk Cousins was super comfortable with that. I have my doubts about the Niners offense, but the biggest difference maker for me in this game is not the running back. It is George Kittle. This guy is a beast. Now that Gronk is gone, how could you say there's a legitimate argument to be made that he is the best tight end in the league and one of the best difference makers when it comes to offense? And Jimmy Garoppolo, it's obviously his guy. He plays the game so hard. He blocks well. He catches the ball well. He runs after the catch well. He is so hard to bring down that, to me, I don't know. I mean, even if they get to Garoppolo fast enough, you can still run screens with him. I think he is absolutely the biggest difference maker in this game, and he's one of the reasons why I think the Niners win this game by a nose. I think they win by a field goal. I'll say 23-20 San Francisco.
To counter that,
Felipe wanted me to give a team and a score, so I'm going to say the 49ers win this game 24-21.
All right.
I have to add my 2 cents in here, and I'm going to debunk your Kittle point there, Randy.
Okay.
So very much how New England was set up, and this is going to be key. I don't think the 49ers have outside threats that are going to scare the Vikings, and they're going to man up on those wide receivers. Emmanuel Sanders is going to play the slot most likely, and you're going to see Kittle play that tight end position. So they're going to bracket Sanders and Kittle with that safety and probably a linebacker or a nickel back. You're probably going to see a nickel back and a safety on Sanders, and you're probably going to see a linebacker and a safety on Kittle. So essentially what that's going to do is, and I know Roberto brought up their run game, those safeties will suck up enough to put close to 8 in the box. It's going to look very similar to an 8-man front. and what they're going to be able to do is contain the run and contain Kittle. Kittle's going to get his yards. You can't stop a playmaker like that. But I don't see Garoppolo making enough pinpoint throws over that secondary under that bracket coverage to beat this team.
That's fair. I'm interested to see how well the Niners run the ball because we obviously saw the Saints not have success with that. Raheem Mostert, obviously a great story, a 6th-round pick, coming through the Browns, playing for a couple other teams, and being a huge difference maker too. And I think that I'm really inspired by actually what he does. I think that's a good story on his part. But I think that Kittle has the same impact that Gronk had for the Patriots. I think he opens up a wide variety of other things. Now, the Patriots may have not ever had the best weapons outside of Gronk, but he really was the catalyst to the rest of that offense. And I'm not saying Kittle is as talented or as great as Gronk once was, but I think he is, if not the best tight end in the league, one of the best tight ends in the league. And I think he deserves that. So I guess we'll find out on Saturday, tomorrow, and kickoff it's not San Francisco, it's Santa Clara, but I'm interested to see how that game shakes out. All right. We're going to move on now to the number 1 seed in the AFC, who has the late game on Saturday, where the Tennessee Titans are going in to face Lamar Jackson, my fantasy MVP of the NFL, to face the Titans, the Baltimore Ravens. Karl, what do you think?
I think this is going to be the first game of the playoffs that will be completely uninteresting. Sorry.
Oh.
I don't see how the Titans really stand a chance in this game whatsoever. Unless they can somehow keep it close early and keep Derrick Henry in the game. I just think that the Ravens are going to pull out too far of a lead. They score on almost every possession, and the Titans will be forced to throw the ball, and I just can't see them keeping up at all.
Matt, what about you, man?
This game I go back and forth on. I'm not really sure. It kind of goes back to me thinking what I thought about the Bills and the Texans. Can Tennessee score enough points to keep up with Baltimore? I think it's probably going to be lower scoring than what we expect, but I'll say it's probably going to be close to 27-23 Baltimore.
I don't want to overrate the Titans because of how I felt about them facing the Patriots. I just think that the Ravens are such a more of a juggernaut and such a better run team at this point that I don't know if they have really what it takes to beat the Ravens. I think Lamar Jackson has played. Obviously, he's the MVP of the league, so any adjective I could come up with to describe his play would not do him justice. I think he's unlike anything we have ever seen before, and I think the Titans are going to have a hard time because, Brady's a statue behind the pocket there. Lamar Jackson is going to make them pay with his legs and with his arm. He's the most versatile dual-threat quarterback maybe ever, and I just think the Ravens are a better team. I think they will struggle with Derrick Henry. I think he is a hard guy to tackle. He is, like a Brandon Jacobs and another old school running back combined, and he's impossible to tackle. He's so big, and I think the corners are going to have a hard time tackling him. I think this will be a close game for a little while, but I think the Ravens win this game by double digits. I'd say 31-21 Baltimore.
I think there's going to be a backdoor cover on this one. Karl, what's the spread on this game?
I believe the spread is 9.5, something like that.
That's a big spread.
Yeah, I see a garbage touchdown by Tennessee to cover that spread a little bit.
Okay, I can see that.
I don't see Tennessee covering at all.
Wow.
I'm going to say the final is going to be 30-13. I don't think it's even going to be close. I mean, you guys are mentioning Derrick Henry, but if the Titans fall behind early by a couple scores, Henry will not be a factor whatsoever. They're going to be throwing, and Tannehill just will not be able to get it there.
And Tannehill has played well since he became the starter of the Titans. Obviously, didn't play well last week, but I think in Foxborough he was just a little nervous. I think you could see that just a tiny bit. But I'm interested to see how he bounces back from that, considering that you're right, Derrick Henry might get taken out of this game sort of early. All right. Moving on to Sunday now, where I think this is one of the most entertaining quarterback matchups. You could call it the Bears Mishap Bowl. You could call it the Deshaun Watson going into Kansas City facing Patrick Mahomes in this matchup. I'm so excited for this game. Karl, what do you think?
I'm pretty excited to see this game too, but I just have a feeling in my heart that I don't have any facts to back this up. I just don't see the Texans keeping this game close at all. I think Kansas City will run away with this game.
Well, and why is that? You just think the rest of the Texan supporting cast just can't keep up with the Chiefs, or do you think Deshaun Watson can compete in the shootout with Patrick Mahomes? What do you think?
I think Deshaun Watson can keep up in the shootout with Patrick Mahomes, but the thing is, Deshaun Watson seems to start. He's similar to Russell Wilson, where he's slows down at the beginning of the game and he picks it up later on. I'm pretty, I think the second half will be a close affair, but in the first half, Kansas City should be able to grab a big enough lead where they'll be able to contain it the whole game.
All right. Well, I need to remind you that the Texans did go into Arrowhead and defeated the Chiefs earlier this year. Matt, do you think that we could see a repeat of that?
No, I don't. I think Kansas City's gelled a lot more defensively. Giving Kansas City a week off is huge, especially for Sammy Watkins and that receiving corps. I think Herdman. Can't remember exactly his last name.
Nicole Hardman.
Yep.
Hardman, yes.
I really love that combination of wide receivers and Travis Kelce. I mean, Mahomes does so many things to a Brett Favre type of level where he can throw from awkward positions. He gets different things and like a lot of stuff you would never coach because it's not your prototypical Drew Brees type of mechanics. But man, the playmakers and the weapons, Houston doesn't have the DBs to keep up with that. And to your point last week, with the lack of Will Fuller being really able to stretch that defense on Kansas City's end, I have a hard time seeing Houston keep pace. And I think it's going to be 24-0 at halftime, pretty realistically. I think Deshaun Watson comes back. He does his normal furious comeback stuff, but it's not enough. Chiefs win 37-20.
I mean, that's fair. I think that especially you're going to go down 16-0 at home to the Buffalo Bills. It's a different environment going away to Kansas City, facing a super talented quarterback, kind of the opposite of Josh Allen. It's hard for me to imagine that this game isn't going to start off that way either. Will Fuller is questionable again. If he plays, maybe it's a different game. But like you said with the secondary, I worry about the Texans' ability to slow down the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. And I want to give a shout out to the Chiefs defense, who have played very well as of late, and they picked up Terrell Suggs as a late season waiver pickup after the Cardinals dropped him. And I don't know how much he has left in the tank, but I think a presence like that can have a poor man JJ Watt effect. And I think Terrell Suggs was a great pass rusher in his day. But Tyrann Mathieu is having an all-pro type season at safety, and he elevates the rest of those players around him. And I won't be surprised if he gets to Deshaun Watson a couple times in this game. Karl, did you give us a final score? And what was the spread on this game?
The spread on this game is, let's see. The spread on this game is 9.5. I just wanted to counter your point about the Texans winning early in the year. In that game, the Chiefs were down 2 offensive linemen, and Sammy Watkins didn't play. And another point is, at that point in the season, the Chiefs are playing on the next Thursday. They were playing a divisional matchup, which during the season that is a much bigger game than a non-divisional opponent. So I have a feeling they were looking ahead and they were missing their 2 linemen and Watkins. I just think this game will be completely different. They had to buy, and I think Andy Reid had them extremely focused and ready to go.
What do you got for score, Karl?
I'm going to say 31-14.
I tend to agree with you guys. I do think this game is going to be probably most likely to be a blowout. I just think Kansas City has such a great home field advantage. I think we are on a crash course for a Ravens-Chiefs AFC title game, which I'm very excited for. I will say
I cannot wait for that. I hope that happens because I'm going to be so happy if we get that game.
Yes, and it'll probably be the game of the year. I'm going to go Chiefs 41, the Texans 24 in this one. All right, to wrap it up here, we have a 2014 NFC Championship rematch, except for flip the location in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks going in there to face the team that he, quite frankly, has owned in his career. Karl, how do you think this game's going to shake out?
This game, I feel like, is going to be the game of the weekend. It's going to be extremely close, and I could really see either team winning. Sorry, my battery's running low. Yeah, I just feel like the Packers had to buy and they had more time to prepare, but I never will count Russell Wilson out, and I just feel like he will do enough to get the Seahawks past the Packers, and I will pick the Seahawks to win. I think it's going to be close. I'm going to say it's going to be very low scoring. I'm going to go 17-14.
Wow. What about you, Matt? What do you think?
This for me is probably the hardest game to pick out of because there's so many different scenarios where I see these teams excelling at. Green Bay was Darius Smith and Preston Smith and Kenny Clark being able to get that pressure. We talk about Minnesota bringing 4 and be able to get pressure. Green Bay can almost bring 3 and get pressure. They're most definitely going to spy Russell Wilson. We saw the Eagles unsuccessfully do that with a safety. I expect Green Bay to do it with Blake Martinez. I mean, I see more ways for Green Bay to win this game than Seattle to win this game, which is a problem. DK Metcalf's going to be an X factor. I just think Green Bay has won every game they've won this year. They've won extremely ugly. It hasn't been pretty. It's been a dog fight. It's going to be cold. It's going to be snowy. Seattle doesn't run the football that well. I really love what Green Bay's done with Aaron Jones. I'm going to take Green Bay 19-16.
Yeah, this game is going to be ugly, I think. And I think the Packers have won every game that they played this year pretty ugly for the most part. I expect Aaron Rodgers to play well for the first time truly this season. He really has not put together an Aaron Rodgers type season. Unfortunately for Seattle, they are banged up. Their running game was not effective at all last week. And I just don't think that Russell Wilson can evade all the pressure that Green Bay is going to put on him and be able to carry this team much further. It's a credit to Russell Wilson for getting the Seahawks this far, but this is where I think it ends. I think the Packers win this game 21-17. And then we get an exciting NFC Championship game after that. I understand we are pretty far over time here, but quick national championship. We have the Clemson Tigers. This is LSU Tigers. Karl, who you got?
I don't really watch college football too much, but I'm going to take LSU.
Matt, what about you?
Love Clemson. Love Trevor Lawrence. Chicago Bears #1 draft pick in 2021. Trevor Lawrence, book it.
I'm the biggest Ed Orgeron fan you'll ever meet in your life. I am going Tigers, the LSU kind, obviously. So go Tigers. All right, that wraps it up for us here on the Deep Thirds Football Podcast in the Football Life. Stay tuned. I believe tomorrow, if I have this wrong, I apologize. I think it's tomorrow. But coming up in Baseball Life, we are going to touch them all with Total Bases with Felipe Milicio and Sean Flannery. A lot of exciting baseball news today as we were live. Mookie Betts and Chris Bryant related, so they'll have all the latest news on that. So stick around, and we'll have more for you guys next week. Take care.
Next week.